Hello, everyone. Lori Lee Rourke from It's Not About Food podcast. And today we are continuing our sort of recovery from an eating disorders, or the path of it. So the first one was on the mountain. The idea of a mountain, climbing a mountain is can feel like recovery from really anything. But we're talking about eating disorders, so sort of recovering from an eating disorder and learning how to take care of yourself, learning how to take care of your body, and learning how to take care of your spirit inside, or allowing that spirit inside to take care of you is probably more correct. And then last month we talked about what happens when you get on top of the mountain, where you have all the feelings and all the behaviors and you just are stuck and you're going back and forth, and how to push through that wall of denial, hatred, shame, misunderstanding, and go to the other side, which is freedom from that recovery, freedom from that thing that has you by the neck, whether it's alcoholism or drug addiction or eating disorders or a breakup or just whatever it is. It's sort of like hurting your heart and having you go through the dark night of the soul. So that was a month before, and then last month was 10 things to do when you're on that top of the mountain, which is the most hardest part of the whole recovery, is that really that tip of, I don't know what I can do instead, and I don't know what to do instead, and I don't know how to get out of this really terrible spot. So we talked about that last month. And today we're going to talk about another idea about recovery, and we're using the image of a spiral. So recovery is not black and white. It's not, okay, today I'm going to recover from this fill in the blank, whatever that is that you're suffering from, and just like forge ahead and be fine and nothing's going to ever happen to me again and I'm going to be great. Those things may be true, but it's not like that. It's not like one day you are something and the next day you are something else. True recovery, conscious recovery, woke recovery, if you will, is much more, it's much more slower than that, because our whole little selves have to catch up with our ideal of where we want to be. And it might take a little while to have that happen. So it'd be great if we could say, okay, well, I'm not going to do this anymore and I'm going to be forever great. You know, we are great already. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. But you may have been using tools that are not as helpful as other ones. So if you can imagine a spiral of that, you start on a spiral at the bottom and you're going along and trying to recover. So you have help, you have therapists helping you, or a friend, or a sponsor, and you're going along and you're learning how to live without the thing, without the addiction or the way of coping that isn't really working for you anymore. And you're sort of putting in place how to feed yourself well, how to take care of yourself well, how to listen to your spirit, how to listen to your emotional self, and you hit a stressor. So you have a really bad day at work. You have a big fight with your partner. You get a run in your stocking. I mean, it can be anything really. And you're back into the behavior. So all of a sudden you're smoking again, or you're overeating again, or you're obsessing about your weight again. But you work yourself around that issue. So that stressor, you work yourself out of it. And then you remember, oh, I know how to take care of myself. I forgot for a minute, but now I remember that it's being compassionate and kind and non-judgmental. And you go along the spiral and you're going up the spiral and you hit another stressor. And you feel like you go all the way down to the basement, but you don't. You learn how to work yourself out of that stressor. And you continue on the spiral. So it's much different than the idea of how we have thought about addictions for a long time, which is you start at one point, you stop the addiction or the thing, and then if you go through a stressor and you go back to that thing, then you're all the way at the basement again and you have to start all over. It's not like that. You are now on another level. You've had 2 times that you have, gone face to face with your so-called demons, and you learn how to work yourself out of them, and you just continue on the spiral. There's no basement to go to. All is not lost. It's like one day you are not sober and the next day you are, and then you're not. It's a process. Maybe you're learning how to feed yourself. And there's a lot of, ways that we don't do it as well as when we have total recovery. So I did not really understand how to feed myself. I didn't know who I was as an eater for a few years, really. That I would try this and try this and try this. And there was a lot of that about every little thing I did. But the spiral is the idea that you're not losing anything. You're actually gaining knowledge. You're gaining trust. You're gaining the ability to take care of yourself 100% when you're on this level. And then when you're on this level. And then when you're on this level. So, and that is going to be the rest of your life with whatever it is that you're working on. Food and weight may fall to the wayside, and then you work on the tsunami of aging, and that might be kind of worked out and you're okay. And then you have to deal with your elder parents dying, or you have to deal with, we're all having to deal with a lot of different things right now. So just in the world in general and in our own little backyards. So we just keep working on it. We just keep learning how to grow and change and be more of ourselves, no matter what comes at us. We don't go, it's not falling off the wagon. There is no wagon to fall off of. There's a spiral, and we're learning as we go up the spiral. And by the time we get to some place where we can pretty much handle our feelings, we can pretty much understand our own spirits, we can, love and take care of the body that we have, then, the spiral gets smaller and smaller, and we're just using our knowledge and our way of taking care of ourselves more and more every day. I don't really think that ever stops. I think, if we're alive, we're having to deal with stuff. I mean, it's just the way that it is. This little pain or this little ache or this thought or this spiritual crisis or whatever it is that we're going through. And the most important thing is to learn how to take care of ourselves through these things, how to move through them with grace and hope for the future and love. Have all of your feelings, no matter what they are, they're all good. And to trust in yourself and trust in your spirit and trust in your life that you've got this. You can do hard things. So once you begin this recovery process, whether the image that you're using is a mountain or a running track or a spiral, it doesn't really matter what your image is or how you wrap your head around that. But know that once you start a process like this, once you start recovering from an eating disorder or any other addiction or way you take care of yourself that really is unhelpful and hurtful for you, Once you start that, it's very hard to go back. In fact, you can't go back. You can go back in denial, but you can't stay there for very long because you know what it's like to be somewhat recovered, if not all the way recovered. And things happen. We fall back, we spring forward. Our time change does that, and we do that too. We learn as we go. Oh, that didn't work. That did work. Well, that used to work, and now it doesn't work anymore. So let yourself have whatever happens to you. You're not going to go back to square one. You're on the spiral. There's always only up. There's only that way to go, learning more and learning more. So whenever you feel like you have failed or you're not making any progress, remember the idea of the mountain and the spiral. Another image that might be good, that I found very helpful, is the idea of the lotus flower. The lotus flower is made in the bottom of the pond, in the muck of the mud and the sediment and all of old leaves that have fallen into the pond and fish poop and all kinds of yucky stuff. It starts way down there in the dark and the muck, but it has a little seed and it starts to grow up towards the light. This little flower just keeps coming up and coming up through this dark night of the soul, if you will, and comes to the top of the pond and opens up into a beautiful flower at the top. And to me, that again is sort of like how it feels to go in and out of recovery, is that you just are scared and it's dark and it's kind of smelly or yucky and you don't want to do it. It's hard to have feelings. It's hard to get your head wrapped around that you have a beautiful spirit. It's hard to let go of the idea that you need to diet or change your body in some way. So this is the mucky stuff that we have to kind of struggle with. And all of the ways that we've learned how to cope have to kind of be, kind of come up for a review, if you will. But if you will stay with yourself and let yourself open into who you really truly are, this beautiful flower, this wonderful sunset, this fantastic thing, this body that we can't even believe we get to be in, really, then your work is done and you have done a lot already. So think of that. I am becoming a flower. I am going through the muck of my life. I am going through a hard time, but I will reach the top of the pond and there will be light and I will be okay. And you might have to do that in your life like a billion times, it feels like, but it's okay. It's all learning. It's all school. It's all class. It's all good. So I hope all of this has helped you with your recovery model of trudging along, trying to get well in a culture that, I don't know, in a lot of ways kind of keeps us sick in a lot of ways. But we can go beyond that. We don't have to let that be our limitations. That can be other people's limitations or whatever, but it doesn't have to be mine and it doesn't have to be yours. So thank you very much for listening to this podcast today, and become a Patreon member if you would like. That would be great to have you as a membership. And let's see. The other thing is I have a website and it's www.beyondhunger.org. That is the organization that Carol and I started in 1988. All we do now is we do peer education, which is I teach young people how to go into schools and talk about disordered eating and body hatred. And then my own website is lauraleerourke.com. And Carol has a little smaller recovery clinic called Amarita. And you can get her from Amarita.com. There's a lot of help out here. No matter where you are on the spiral, on the mountain, or in the pond, there's a lot of help. Get it and give it. And thank you very much.